Hello, I am super excited to make this video today. I'm going to get my new 8-inch helical cutter head installed into my joiner. Now I bought this joiner used about a year and a half ago. I paid $350 for this joiner. It was in really rough shape. It's 39 years old, made in Taiwan. I think it's called a cowl cut. I've never heard of this company before. All of these joiners, they're all made in Taiwan. They all look identical. I have a theory about it. That's a story for another video. I'm going to try to use as few, if any, specialty tools as possible to do this. I'm assuming this is going to take about a half hour. I don't think this is going to be a difficult mod to do to your joiner here. I'm going to show you a trick how to make it a little easier to install press fit bearings and bearing housings. So with that, let's get this box opened up, see what we got here, then we'll start taking it apart and get this installed. Let's get into it. Did get it all unboxed. Do want to start off by saying this is an Elephas cutting head. I did pay full price for this on Amazon. This video is not sponsored in any way. Just so you know, all of my opinions on this are all completely unbiased. So I did notice it came very well boxed. It was very well protected. Comes with 2 bearings, 2 sets of tools, some extra cutting blades, and some extra, I guess these are proprietary bolts to hold the cutting heads on. I don't know, we'll look into that later. So now that we got it all unboxed and everything looks in good shape, I'm going to get the foam wrap back around this. We're going to take this cutting head now and we're going to put it in the freezer. When you're dealing with press fit bearings and bearing housings, if you can cool one of the pieces down and heat the other piece up, it doesn't even need to be that much. It makes assembly so much easier. Okay, while that barrel assembly is in the freezer, we're going to start disassembling the joiner and getting ready to replace it. So we'll start by taking the safety guard off here. Next, we're going to take the fence assembly off. And we're ready to come off. Do be careful with this thing. It is pretty heavy. You don't want to drop it or smash it around very much. Next, we're going to want to get the fence mount taken off. This is really easy. There's just 2 bolts. You don't need to take them off. Just loosen them. And then it just slides right off. Next, we're going to get the belt and the pulley taken off. I know I can just take this belt off really easily just by spinning it like that. If you're running a regular V-belt, I would highly recommend that you put a piece of tape on it and mark the direction of rotation that it's going. If you get them flipped around and put on backwards, it can shred that V-belt, really reduce the life expectancy of them. Just a little tip there. I'll get the pulley off. This is keyed, so make sure you don't lose that key. Now we're going to want to lower the in-feed and out-feed table down as far as they go. Not so bad. Next, we're going to remove the 2 nuts that hold the cutter assembly in there. There's one on here and there's one on the back side as well. Try not to lose the nuts here down in there. Hopefully it doesn't spin the shaft out of it. If it does, it's not the end of the world. We can still get it out. Yeah, it looks like it's going to take the shaft with it. So I might need to play with that a little bit. It's no big deal. Okay, now we can get the other side undone. Before I go any further here, I'm going to put some tape on this cutter head just to make sure I don't cut myself. And I cut myself immediately after getting that tape on there. Let me get that cleaned up. There's a stud that runs through here that connects the bearing housing to that nut, and that stud is spinning out. It's stuck on the nut. So I'm going to try to lift the whole assembly up with the screwdriver right there so I can spin this out and get that whole stud unscrewed from the bearing housing. There we go, got it. Now that I got all the nuts off the bottom, I can see I'm not going to be able to clear this bearing housing out without taking off this support piece right here. So let me get this support piece off first. Okay, now that we're ready to pull this out, we're going to need to pay attention to make sure there's no shims underneath either one of these bearing housings. Just make sure when you take it out, you look in there closely in case they fall out so you know what side they go on. They're to help level the whole barrel assembly to the outfeed table. So I know, since I've had this apart before, that mine has some like a paper shim over here. I tried to not mess with it when I took it apart and cleaned it. Luckily, I was able to get it back together and everything was still straight. Hopefully, I'll still be able to do the same. I may need to measure it and reshim it with something. So you can see here, you can see that paper that was on there as a shim over here. These are the bolts that I was talking about. Unfortunately, this one stayed off, so maybe we can get that off so we can get it back installed in here. Now let's get it over to the table and we can pull these bearing housings off. Okay, before we pull these bearing housings off, we're going to want to mark which side goes on which side. Just in case they're different, we want to make sure we put everything back together the same way it came apart. So we're going to mark this one with a P. This is the pulley side. So we'll just mark that with a P so we know to put that back on that side. Okay, we'll see how this is going to work out. This is a plumbing tool. Now, I'm notorious for saying always use the proper tool for the job. This is technically not the proper tool. It is a puller. So we're going to try to use this to pull this out. This is the puller you use to pull the fittings off of valves, like under your sink, to pull that compression fitting off of the 1/2 inch copper pipe. So we're going to try to use this to get these off. We'll see if we can make that happen here. I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to happen. Man, I wonder what I did with the other one. I had 2 of these. I could cut it. I bet you I have a bolt I could use on there. Yeah, I did have to swap out on this side and put a bolt in here. The other one was too long. It wasn't going to work. No problem. It's like an $8 tool. That worked perfect. Pull it right off. No problem. Okay, I'm going to start by getting the bearings installed into the bearing housings. First, we're going to just get a little bit of oil on there. Just to help it go in. And we're going to get a couple washers. Get some nut and bolts. So we're just going to get it started in there. Yeah, it's not going to be big enough. I need to find another washer here. Hey, look at that. This goes right on in. was easy. No problem. Now for the fun part, we're going to put the outside one on first, and then we'll put the pulley side one on second, because the pulley side one's going to be a little more interesting here. I think we can probably get this outside one on relatively easy. This wood here, and we'll get that out of the freezer. Hopefully it'll just slide right on. We'll see what happens. Socket. I don't have a hammer. Got to be quick. It'll warm up fast. So now we're just going to tap the inner race of that bearing to knock it all together. Now that we got the cutter head installed, we got the joiner put all back together, the last step is to set the outfeed bed height. This is a super crucial adjustment that a couple thousandths of an inch can make all of the difference of how this tool works and the frustration you're going to feel while using it. What I'm about to say and how I adjust mine and set mine up is probably different than other things that you've read or seen online. I'm not trying to start any arguments. If you set yours up different and it works good for you, awesome. I'm super happy about it. This is the way my tool works the best. I've had other joiners that I set up this way as well, and they work better setting them up this way. So again, not trying to start any arguments, but this is the way I set it up. You do what you want. Okay, I set my outfeed table to be 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch lower than the cutting heads. If I set it up exactly the same height, I have a hard time pushing the piece through. It starts feeling real sticky. I have a hard time getting flat boards. It'll cut the first half of the board, then not cut the back half. Whatever. Again, this is the way I set mine up. This is the tool I made a long time ago to set up the blade height on my joiners. It's just a block of aluminum with a dial indicator in there. We're not going to use that for this setup. I don't think most people have custom tools that they've made. So we're going to use a feeler gauge and a straight edge. You could use a combination square, carpenter square, whatever you have. I'm assuming most people have a combination square they could take the ruler out of. This is my straight edge that I use. Technically, you could use a scrap piece of wood that you know is straight on one edge. So it might take a little bit more of adjustment and going back and forth if you do it this way, but it's not difficult. So with that, let's set this blade height. I have this set up so that the bed's way too low right now. We're going to put that on the blade. So I'm going to put the feeler gauge in there. Right now I'm using the, I guess if you want to be a math dork, that's 25 10,000ths. I like to call that 2.5 thousandths, whatever you would like to use. So we're going to put that underneath there, and I'm going to raise the bed. There we go. Yeah, that's too high, so I'll lower it back down. I want to get it so it just barely touches it and moves that ruler. There we go. I can see right there. I rock this back and forth. See, it barely touches it. And we'll move it over and check the other side as well. Perfect. Leave it right there. Now that we got the bed exactly where we want it, just lock that down so it won't move. Now we're ready to go, ready to see how it's going to work. After running a couple pieces of wood through here, I can 100% say that I regret not getting this cutter head earlier. It makes a huge difference. A, the tool is way quieter. B, it runs way smoother. The finish on the wood is way smoother. It almost seemed like it was a little choppy before and leave a bunch of little lines in the wood. This comes out almost, I mean, it still needs to be sanded, but it's way nicer. I really like the way this thing turned out and the way this is working. I regret not doing it sooner. If you have a old joiner, I highly recommend considering upgrading to one of these helical cutter heads if it's in your budget. Well, if you made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you give me that thumbs up button. It really helps me make more content in the future, and it also helps share the video with other people who share our interests. I'd really appreciate it.